Good morning, friends and enemies. Today, we're going to do a little exercise where we compare last year's rookie running back class to this year's. The top 24 rookies in terms of their Dynasty rookie prospect value. So to the best of my recollection, I'm going to try to recapture the way I felt about the prospects in last year's class around the rookie draft time and how I looked at them as prospects. So almost like recreating the rankings without knowing how they actually performed in the NFL this year. So the way I looked at them last year and hopefully recreating the rankings that I had for them and then comparing how I feel about the rookie prospect class this year. I'm trying my best to be unbiased about how I felt with them last year so you guys can get a more realistic view of, comparing this year's class to last year's. And if this is a year that you want to invest in a specific position, this is how I would be looking at it. We're going to do the same exact thing for the top 24 wide receivers of this year as well as last year's rookie classes. So if you enjoy this video, if you think you're going to enjoy that video, if it's going to put a big old smile on your face, make sure you hit the subscribe button, all right? And let's jump into the no-brainer 101 here. The top ranked rookie, and these are going to be broken down into tiers about the way I'm thinking about these players. And, obviously Ashton Jeanty is the one there. There was no one in last year's class. There was no one in this year's class that is remotely close to the tier of a prospect that he is. After that, we've got 5 running backs in a tier, all right? And it is the majority of this year's top class. We have Omarion Hampton right behind Jeanty. He's at 2. Jonathan Brooks is the 3 for me. Trayvon Henderson is the 4. Quinshon Judkins is the 5. And Caleb Johnson is the 6. I was infatuated with Jonathan Brooks coming out of last year's class. Obviously, he was coming off of the torn ACL, got day 2 capital, tore his ACL again. So we will not see his career come to fruition, but I was pretty convinced he was the second coming of Aaron Jones. Loved him as a prospect, and I thought he was going to have a phenomenal NFL career. Great vision, 3-down ability, good size, had it all. And that's kind of the way I'm looking at this group of dudes here, where very few holes, man. Like Trayvon Henderson, maybe you have some vision concerns, but I think his explosive playmaking ability more than makes up for it. Quinshon Judkins is a dude who blew the combine away, 220 pounds, prolific college player. Caleb Johnson, same thing. Omarion Hampton, same thing. So I think all of these dudes have upside to be, running back ones consistently over the course of their fantasy career. And if you told me any of them ended up having a top 3 overall fantasy running back season, even, 2 or 1 or whatever, would be no surprise to me. So up to this point, we're 6 running backs deep, and, it is the majority of the 2025 class so far. When we get to the next tier, we've got 6 players, and it is still the majority of players in the 2025 class. And now I actually remember why I made this video in the first place, because last week or 2 weeks ago, depending on when you watch this, I made a video of guys that I'm trying to sell right now. And Trey Benson was one of the players I mentioned in the video that I would sell for an early second if I could right now to try again on the running back position, but in a better class. And I said in that video, Trey Benson in this year's class would probably be my RB8 or my RB9. And, I think one of the first comments was like, "You're such a Benson hater," which makes no sense to me because I have no stake in Trey Benson. I have no personal vendetta or no personal agenda of whether or not Trey Benson succeeds. I could care less. It got me to thinking, is that true? Would he be the RB6, by this comment? And I looked at how I ranked the classes, and I looked at the way I thought about Trey Benson in last year's class. I was not overly high on him whatsoever. And looking at this tier, I have Dylan Sampson as my 7, Cam Scatabo as my 8, Damian Martinez as my 9. And then we get into a clump of guys from last year. Trey Benson as the 10, Marshawn Lloyd as the 11, and then Bucky Irving as the 12 overall. Now, clearly I missed on Bucky Irving there. He belongs in the tier of the Jonathan Brooks is up there. He's already proven himself at the NFL level. But again, I'm trying to go back to how I looked at them as a prospect. Bucky Irving was an undersized guy that didn't have a lot of speed, right? Above 4'5", under 200 pounds. So not a prospect mold that you see hit very often, but of course a miss as it pertains to Bucky. And I think one of the things I probably overlooked was just how strong of a tackle breaking profile he had. He was a dude that basically led the class in terms of missed tackles forced per attempt. And, the size speed thing is becoming less and less of a hurdle for rookie running backs to really overcome in the NFL in today's day and age. So that is something I will learn from. But when I look at the class now, you're talking about Jeanty, Hampton, Henderson, Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson, Cam Scatabo, Damian Martinez before I get to Trey Benson. Trey Benson and Marshawn Lloyd, I had significant vision concerns with them coming out of school last year. We don't know what they're going to be, but again, this is, to my best recollection, the way I felt about them as prospects and whether or not I really thought that they were going to be good. I think they have upside to hit a high level of fantasy production because their athleticism is there. But I thought a lot of times they relied way too heavily on their athleticism to make production happen. Whereas Samson, Scatabo, and Damian Martinez, I think all three of them offer, like Samson offers game-breaking speed, and he's great in between the tackles. Scatabo offers incredible three-down ability, really tough in between the tackles, really high-volume pass catcher. And also, I thought he ran really well in between the tackles. Damian Martinez, same thing, like James Conner type. So I thought all three of those guys were much better prospects than Trey Benson and Marshawn Lloyd that got elevated up because it was such a weak running back class. And again, Bucky, we obviously missed on. The next tier of guys I have, next group of tier of running backs I have is Blake Corum at 13, Bashaw Tootin at 14, Braylon Allen at 15, Jalen Wright at 16. So you're getting into the guys where, you know, they're not clear studs by any direction of the imagination, but they're pretty well received just in the draft community, in the combine community, and they're getting enough hype to probably be, you know, day 2 picks, maybe early day 3 picks. And if things break right, you could see them getting a nice opportunity here, but definitely some overwhelmingly weak parts of their profile here. You know, Corum is just not an explosive back. Bashaw Tootin has the combine, you know, and that's kind of shooting up his upside. Braylon Allen might just be like fat and slow, to be honest with you. Jalen Wright has crazy vision concerns, all right? So those are the next 4, and the way I'm looking at them, those are like, if we're talking draft capital, when I look at Ashton Jeanty, obviously elite first-round pick. When I look at the second tier of guys, Marion Hampton, Brooks, Henderson, Judkins, Caleb Johnson, we're talking about anywhere from the early first to the late first. So you're talking about a tier of guys that, depending on landing spot and draft capital, can go anywhere from like the 102 to the 111. When I look at the next tier, Samson, Scatabo, Martinez, Benson, Lloyd, Bucky, you're talking about dudes that are likely like the 202, 203, to the 206, 207, 208 in that range. That's kind of where that tier draft capital makes a lot of sense. And of course, you know, based on, like I said, the NFL draft, you know, if Damian Martinez somehow goes day 2 to like Pittsburgh and they didn't take a running back, or like day 2 to Chicago, you know what I mean? Like if they go to a really good landing spot, obviously that's going to fluctuate and ebb and flow the value of these players. When I look at the next group of guys, you're talking about dudes on the cusp of the second round, like Blake, Tootin, Allen, Wright, guys that I would rather not use my, you know, 210, 211 on them, but you might have to if you're trying to go a little bit heavy into the running back position, but they're much better spent on, you know, like the 3-1. But I think anywhere from like the 211 to the 3-1 is about what their value is. So they're not cracking that second tier where, like, regardless of where Tootin goes, I don't really see a world where I'm trying to get him at like the 2-2, 2-3 as opposed to the guys above him. Moving on to the next tier, we've got Tyrone Tracy, who I was very high on last year, Ollie Gordon, RJ Harvey, and Audric Estime. These are dudes that are pretty much, in my opinion, solidified as like early third rounders, you know, barring incredible draft capital landing spot. But I think from what we've heard, you know, Tracy was a day 3 pick. Audric Estime was a day 3 pick. I think Ollie Gordon will probably go day 3. RJ Harvey getting some hype, but at the end of the day, I would imagine he'll be a day 3 pick as well. And they're guys that, you know, can have some upside. Gordon's obviously a prolific college producer. RJ Harvey has crazy athleticism and a lot of explosiveness, but clear gaps in their game as well. So you're hoping that they land in a good spot, even though their prospect profile is definitely far more open than the guys above them in that tier. Moving down to the last tier of guys, the top 24 rounded out, we have the tier of Isaac Garendo, who I was, again, pretty high on, DJ Giddens, Ray Davis, and Devin Neal. So these are dudes you're just kind of taking shots on in the third round, you know, that maybe that's like the 3-3, 3-4, 3-5 if you really like them, but more often than not, you're probably going to get them around the 3-6 to the 3-12, maybe even into the early 4th, depending on when those guys get drafted in the NFL draft. You know, hopefully this exercise was a little bit helpful for you. As you can see, you know, people have been talking about the 2025 class being really, really strong, and I hope this exemplifies that for you. I think by the end of the chart, you had a near even split, probably more heavily favored into the 2025 class. Maybe it was like 13-11 or 14-10 or something like that. But from the top 10 guys, you had 8 2025 prospects, 2 2024 guys. Then you have a run of 2024. But the overall point here is that, like, if you're going for running backs, I would much rather, again, get out of last year's class, get into this year's class, even if you're rolling the dice again here. So just a quick little something for you. If you enjoyed the video, let me know, and I will definitely make the wide receiver version of this. I'm probably going to make it regardless. If you like the comparison type of videos, I did player comps for every player of my top 24 of this year's class rankings, broken down from 1 through 12 and then 13 through 24. I'll put those videos in the show notes as well as kind of link them right here if you want to go watch them afterwards. But thank you for watching today. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll see you when I see you. Smoochies.